I'm Professor Christian Onyeji, uh, currently a lecturer at the Department of Music, University of Nigeria, which is in Enugu State in Nigeria. I specialize essentially in composition, performance, and music education. And most times my compositions are drawn from the resources we find in African music, and which is a current development since the 20th century, where many African composers have been drawing from indigenous music for their creative, idioms and elements. I would say is a strong addition, to what we, got, in formal music training, by the composers who have explored our indigenous resources thus far, and quite a number of musical, creativity or compositions have emerged from this exploration,
Could you tell us specifically about the piece you and your wife performed today, your own composition, Mama?
Okay. We had two presentations. One was composed by, unfortunately, one of our, great composers who is late now, late Professor Joshua Uzwigwe, who worked with me directly as my supervisor, and I learned a lot from him. So the song is from his area, which is in Omuahe in Abia State of Nigeria today. And I can infer from the mood and the text of the music that it's about a woman who is perhaps soliloquizing or reflecting on her position in the family and maybe singing to her husband, who I imagine may have taken a second wife and maybe paying attention more to that second wife. And so she was kind of trying to draw the attention of the husband back to herself. And so the critical issue here is how our songs, which also, for me, my song Mama is some kind of felicitation, good wish, joy for anybody who is engaged or desirous to do anything noble or good. And so I looked at the piece as something that develops around goodness. And Mama in Igbo language is good wish, goodwill, well done, thank you, such things. So the song didn't go into so much use of words that have linguistic meaning, but I explored other elements and tendencies which we will look at here based on tonal inflection of our music and the language of Africa, sub-Sahara Africa, where we have acknowledged in ethnomusicological research and composition marriage, if I would say, that most texts or languages, sub-Saharan Africa, are tonal in the sense that the level of pitch at which a word is spoken determines its meaning in the context of use. For instance, if we say Ike is a word that is made up of three letters, I-K-E. Ike in Igbo language can mean a couple of things. Ike, for instance, the way I've spoken it now is power, strength. Ike, on the other hand, is still the same three-letter word, I-K-E. But at that point, I'm saying buttocks. Ike, which is the same three-letter word, means to tie, or with a rope. And so also many other meanings within the context. So in Africa, sub-Sahara, like I said, Africa, we have this challenge of relating text to song or melodies in context. And meaning that if you are not careful, the meaning of a text in a composition or particular context of composition may be lost to the language owners or to the language speakers, because the implication of that word or words or sentence may be something else which was not intended by the composer. And that's why quite often we encourage composers of this kind of music to consult. If you're not a language owner or speaker, consult those who own that language to be able to convey exactly what the meaning of that text is. And so in this song, for instance, we performed, the first song says, Karami ve dimoma. That means, tell me something, my husband. In the actual word, the way it is spoken in that language, kara or karam, is to tell. And you can see that the language, the tone level goes up. Meaning kara, if you mark it, it is going up one middle tone and another one high tone. And assuming a composer inverts that and say kara, it's a different thing. Like if I say kara, I may be talking about somebody said or gossiped. It's not the same thing as tell me. They're different things. So the composer has to pay attention to this. But again, you see, there are so many arguments around the tonal inflection in the context of composition. In the spoken language, of course, people understand, but you don't mix it up, because to convey the meaning of any text, you need to communicate properly. But in composition, many people have argued, that Gawu, for instance, in his study, argued, and myself also, and some other studies, argued that in the context of a piece of music, you can modify to obey the creative essence of the work. So we are arguing that a text or a melody must not necessarily be slavish to the tones of the language, but that must be carefully utilized. In contemporary compositions and studies, we are arguing that within a context, a text that has been established does not necessarily have to run in that way, because it will become fairly monotonous. That when a meaning has been established, you can adjust, because already the audience, the listeners, have established the meaning of that text within the context. And so you can let's say a bass line can say karamive dimoma, for instance, kara. But because it has been established, karamive dimoma, in the song, like we performed, means the listeners, the audience, have already established that the song is saying, tell me something good. So if bass, for instance, draws it down, karamive dimoma, which originally may distort the meaning, but within that presentation, it's been established that this is what we're saying. But again, you see, composers had to devise other ways, particularly when you're dealing with SATB music. When you have 4-part melody or music, you have to find a way to maintain meaning and also sustain musical interest. Because these are two things that when you are dealing with a text, you are trying to sustain textual meaning, at the same time sustain musical interest or sonic relevance of that music within the composition. So what do we do? Most times, even when we go back to one of our earliest developments in choral music in Nigeria, which we call native air. In fact, it was quite popular right from the late 60s, 70s down. And we have what we call native air, where people draw from either biblical stories or folk stories to arrange either as SATB work or even something more extensive. So what do? They try as much as possible to, in such cases, to employ one method is contrapuntal method, in which each line runs independently. Where a soprano, for instance, will be saying the same thing, but an imitation or another line, which also sustains the textual meaning, will be running, in counterpoint with it. So you can do that for a whole part. For instance, karamive, 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 that kind of thing. So it runs from part to part, but at the end of it, the music itself has sustained the textual meaning, but also has presented a very good musical, interest to the listeners. That is one method. Secondly, we employ what some people have defined as untranslatables, vocables, vocalization, and so on, to sustain, harmonic interest in a given piece of music, but at the same time, making sense both linguistically and musically. So what happens? You find people say, in this song, for instance, karami ve di moma, yaroma, the is not of any linguistic implication, but is of musical essence at that point in time, and also conveys, the totality of the composer's intention. This can be used in 4-part writing, it can be used in 2-part or 3-part writing, whatever you want. But also, you find that you can deploy that according to parts. The bass can have D moma, for instance, whereas somebody is saying something conveying the message of that part or that section of the work. The alto, the tenor, they can engage in all those, weaving of non, linguistic either vowels or vocables or whatever you may call it, at that point in time. And if you listen to my own song, Mama, I decided to extend this a little. Because, in fact, the whole publication, which is available, most of the original compositions that I did, which are trying to, present a possibility of drawing from indigenous resource in composing original folk music. This time they are not arrangement. The book is in two sections. One contains folk songs that are arranged, but another section is all about the possibilities. What I did was to avoid linguistic issues that may arise in singing these songs. I tried to use more of those vocables, those onomatopoeias, those vowelizations, those untranslatables, as some people defined it, so as to ensure that we extend the music, create the same mood, give the same musical impression. For instance, one of the songs here is about war dance in Ohofia side, which goes. And so on. It starts this music I just played now. If you bring somebody from Ohofia and play this, the person knows you're playing the Ohofia war dance. And even the vocal side, the vocal part, tries to imitate the recitative style of the group. But here it's an art music, it's a song written, but tries to capture the essence of that indigenous music in this art form. And so we try to, as much as possible, avoid doing what may give people problem in terms of linguistic implications, but try to, like here and now, you have Igalu onyoma igaba egwoma igalu or it's saying nothing, but at the same time is in the mood. It conveys the interest, the impression of the same music according to whichever song we're presenting. And so what we're saying here is composers, one, have deployed the contrapuntal method to overcome linguistic problem or challenges they may have in certain indigenous texts to music because of tonal infection. They've also employed untranslatables, like we've said here, to overcome such challenge. And in some cases, whether it is either solo or 4-part or 3-part, that is being done to ensure that we can continue to expand the scale of our music, but at the same time maintaining both meaning and musical interest. And again, like I said, the argument is there underlying that once a text or a pattern or a line has been established in the context of a piece of music, that it may not necessarily generate a lot of tension, linguistic tension or a problem, if it is slightly modified somewhere because of the need to maintain either harmonic or melodic interest of the music. That's about the gist of it.